Right now, I am sitting on a time machine, and yes, I'm sure you expected a time machine to look a little bit more something like this. But no, to my surprise as well, it is literally just a chair. Anyways, this time machine is taking me back 1,461 days so that I can give beginner Brody, that's me by the way, this booklet here of everything that I've learned about the FPV drone hobby since starting out. Inside this booklet, I've specifically written down 40 pieces of FPV advice that I wish I'd known earlier, you know, things that would have actually helped me save my money, spend less time on the unimportant things, and well, just get the most enjoyment out of my 4 years in the hobby. In today's video though, I'm gonna make a few stops back along the way and share everything inside of this booklet with you as well. So, let's begin, shall we? Oh, good lord, all right, geez. I guess that was a little bit of a rough start. Anyways, first up is something that I still struggle to actually do to this day, and I don't know why, because it's potentially one of the most beneficial things ever. Honestly, it's damn simple, one of the cheapest things to do in the hobby, and it makes you fly better. So what the heck is this first piece of advice? Well, it's don't skip the simulator. For me, I honestly struggle to find the time as I would prefer to be out in reality flying. However, it also means that my skills don't really progress as I'm always scared of breaking something if I try, say, my first trippy spin with my $500 drone. I would be so much better off nailing the fundamentals in a simulator and then translating those same stick movements later on into the real deal. Okay, I'm starting to feel like I'm really talking to myself here. The second piece of advice is that more drones really doesn't mean more fun or even opportunities. I'm now thankful to be in the rare position where companies will actually send me their products for free, which does mean that I end up with drones that I never actually asked for. But I do remember dreaming of this day and just thinking about how much better life would be if it could just happen to me. I'd be able to go fly more, have more fun, get jobs because of the gear. But yeah, no. As someone who is now in this position, I'm here to report that this is not at all the case. Don't get me wrong, I'm really grateful for it all, but it's not the golden goal that you should be striving towards. This third thing is one of those hurdles that are really hard to jump over at first, but it does get slightly easier as you actually get older. I know starting out, I personally wanted the absolute cheapest route into FPV, and so I bought the most budget kit around with a terrible controller. It wasn't any more than a few hours before that controller completely failed on me, so I bought a slightly more expensive but still very cheap controller. And believe it or not, that controller didn't fail on me once, but instead twice. So 3 failed controller experiences, all of which took multiple weeks to sort through. Had I simply bought a better controller for a bit more money, I would have saved myself so much time and effort. So that's number 3, invest in better gear, it's gonna save you the headache. Next is best demonstrated by my fairly recent purchase of the Pocket Radio. This is a super budget friendly controller that is really small and just made of a whole bunch of light plastic parts. I also got myself set up with an HD0 Meteor 75 Pro, and of course, HD0 goggles to be able to fly it. Why am I telling you this though? Well, it's because it's all got one big thing in common: size. My biggest roadblock to flying in new places or actually taking my gear away on trips was always because of the size, the weight, and the price. I've found with buying a cheap controller, I'm much more likely to just throw it in my bag or car without worrying about it. And to pair that with a really fun small drone, I've got myself the perfect little setup for like lightweight travel. So number 4, I'm saying you'll go on more adventures if you keep things compact, small, and inexpensive. Look, I won't lie, I'm definitely a little bit nervous to press this button again, but in the name of adventure, I'm gonna do it. I guess it's broken there. Now, if you're always striving to improve your flying, I need you to stop. Wait, what? But why? Well, it's all because of this one thing. I went through a phase where I was seriously hyper-focused on just getting better at flying, and I think for the time it served its purpose, and it did serve me well. However, it led to complete burnout. At the time, I didn't feel it, I couldn't see it coming, and I was simply oblivious to the whole situation. When it finally hit me, I can't even begin to explain just how crap it felt, but burnout isn't what I'm here to focus on right now. Number 5 is forcing yourself to always improve isn't sustainable and never has an endpoint to hit. By constantly striving for improvement as the end goal, you'll come to realize at some point or other that you can't actually get there, which is a really sucky realization to find out. So focus on periods of improvement, but give yourself other goals to work towards other than just get better. Alrighty, number 6 is one of the best realizations that ever happened to me. I had thought for so many months that there wasn't actually much to the whole hobby, and that especially here in little New Zealand, that I was all alone. I practically tricked myself into believing that there was no one else around me who was interested in flying FPV, and I say tricked because, well, you guessed it, there were plenty of people around me. Number 6 is simply meet new people ASAP. Trust me, even if you aren't a super sociable person, having times when you do your hobby with other like-minded people is just like one of the best feelings ever. If you, like me, start off FPV with an open prop drone or a large Cinewhoop, then this is the piece of advice that you need to hear. You're especially going to love this one too if you want an excuse to go and spend a bit of money. And when I say a bit, I truly mean it. This isn't going to break your bank, but it is going to blow your mind. Number 7 is get a tiny whoop. You'll never regret just how fun they are and how durable they are too. Honestly, that one line wraps everything up perfectly here. They may be small, but the amount of fun my tiny whoop has brought me is simply incomparable to its price and its size. Now, this is a fun and very controversial one, but I still feel as though anyone who thinks in this mindset is stuck in the old school ways of the hobby. If you want to be an up-to-date hobbyist, I think it's important to take into consideration that things change and evolve over time, even if we don't want them to. That's why advice number 8 is ignore those who tell you that you need to build a drone. We are now in a time where it's easier than ever for someone new to get into FPV with a pre-build, and you know what? I flippin' love that. Yes, there are certainly going to be times where knowing how to build your own drone is going to be beneficial, like if you break something or, a component fails and needs replacing. However, even if this does happen and you have no idea what to do, there's always someone else who knows and is happy to help you out. In the long run, I still do recommend that you eventually learn how a drone works and how to put one together, but if the time isn't right for you straight away, don't feel forced to. Oh man, number 9 is like really one of those things that really changed FPV for me. Yet again. If you didn't know already, I started out flying FPV solely to capture cinematic video footage for my videos. Nothing more, nothing less. As time went on, I started learning how to do some cinematic tricks, and that's about it. What I had no idea about though was the other 3 worlds of FPV that I was completely neglecting and in turn missing out on. I truly never used to understand why people would really enjoy any form of racing, regardless of if it was horses, cars, or people, let alone drones, but ever since I attended my first FPV race event and have given it a shot, I've been 110% hooked. Similar things can be said about freestyle too. I could never understand why I would want to fly around in a small place that doesn't look cinematic and do things with my drone that aren't slow and smooth. Again, all it took was a few sessions of trying it out with my friends to find that the challenge of hitting gaps and controlling the drone in such a different way was all sorts of fun. So with that being said, number 9 is try out every different niche of flying that's long range, racing, freestyle, and cinematic. Seriously, you're not ever gonna regret trying them out. Okay, number 10. Back when I was starting out, I bought an awesome FPV drone kit with the expectation of being able to soar down mountains and film super cinematic footage. After all, this was the exact sort of thing that I had seen on all forms of social media, so surely I would be able to do it after some practice, right? Well, lack of skills aside, the issue I faced here was nothing to do with the fact that I had bought a Tiny Hawk 2 with a crappy pair of goggles that had a shockingly tiny range. Nope, instead it was all to do with my expectations of what I would be able to do with it. I really thought that I would be able to take this budget drone kit and send it super far away with a GoPro strapped to it, just like a much more expensive drone. Honestly, I have no issue with the fact that I bought a budget-friendly FPV kit, as without it I may have never continued on with the hobby. However, my expectations were set way too high for the price that I paid. So number 10 is, if you can't afford expensive gear, don't rush to buy it. Get the cheap stuff for fun, but understand the downfalls are real. The 11th thing is one that Bot Grinder, a really well-respected OG of the hobby, brought up in a video essay earlier this year. Without going into tons of detail, he mentioned that influencers were ruining the hobby by essentially becoming shills of companies. You know what? I don't 100% agree with everything he mentioned in his video. However, for this part, I couldn't agree more. The reality is, right now, companies are sending products out to YouTubers for free, and way too many YouTubers are more interested in keeping a positive relationship with the company rather than with their audience, which is you guys. This leads to positive reviews of crappy products that doesn't actually highlight any of the downsides, leaving the viewers with an untruthful perception of what the product will actually do for them. That's all to say that number 11 is don't trust every reviewer online. The OGs are usually your best bet and will serve you well in the long run. If you need some good ideas on who you can actually trust at this point, I would point you towards Joshua Bardwell, Mads Tech, Original Dobo, and UAV Futures. Of course, there are plenty more OGs, but these are the guys that will be able to help you get started the best and least biased way possible. Alrighty, this next one is something that the more you do, the better it gets, and I'm not talking about practicing your skills here either, even though that is indeed the case here too, but recently I've been trying to catch up with my friends Sam and Julius every week for a flight sesh. Whether that means a whole day of flying or just a couple of hours, it really doesn't matter. Instead, the reasoning behind it is really simple. When I fly alone, it can indeed sometimes be a nice getaway, but for the most part, it generally feels somewhat lonely. Flying with friends makes even those times that just kinda suck that tiny little bit more fun, and really just a more enjoyable experience. It's for that reason that number 12 is invite your friends over to fly more with you. The best thing about this hobby for me has been finding company that actually gets along with me and shares similar thoughts and interests as well. Okay, well, let's just do a bit of a fast track through the next few. Now, don't get me wrong here, these are all just as important, but I don't want you getting bored, so let's do it. When you have no idea what the heck to do, feel stuck in your progress, or just don't know how to bind your controller to a drone, join a Discord group and just ask. No one's gonna judge you for it, and no question is too stupid. We've all been where you are at some point in time. Next is to not get too hung up on the whole beta flight thing. It really does seem complex at first. Well, I mean, at least it did for me, but over time, as you start to take things on, you'll find that it gets just a whole bunch easier. In saying that though, I do also have to say I still consider myself a beta flight noob. Like, honestly, half the stuff that is within the program, I have no idea how to use, and I still haven't spent the entire amount of time needed to learn how to tune a drone properly either. So, plenty more things to learn on my side too. This next one spins back around to the whole invite your friends over to fly more often. Whenever I have that subconscious feeling of just somebody else watching me while I'm flying, just makes me fly so much better. This makes it so that whenever I'm flying with other people, I tend to see the most progress in my skills, and adding on to that as well, whenever I fly around people who are better than me, which, let's be real, is probably pretty much every single time, I can just ask them questions or for their opinion on something, which is just invaluable. Maybe this one is more my problem than it is anyone else's, but let me know if it affects you too. Whenever I'm trying new tricks or tackling a new course, I tend to find that I get increasingly frustrated when I'm unable to do the new thing well. Like when trying my first freestyle trick, the Rubik's Cube, I couldn't nail that for a good few days, and so over those few days, I would always leave feeling pretty damn frustrated. My advice here, and I still need to listen to this one more myself, is learn new tricks, but don't get frustrated when you can't master them straight away. Now, this piece of advice hasn't only worked really well for me in the past, but it's also helped out multiple other pilots right here in our community. A little while ago, I gave everybody in the FPV newsletter a chance to have their best flight footage judged by both myself and my friend Julius, who's been a pilot for over 8 years now. We both gave our thoughts and next steps for each submission, adding in whatever value we thought would work best for each person. From this, we had responses back saying just how much this advice had pushed them forward and how they might have never felt ready for the next step. This alone is more than enough evidence to validate the 17th piece of advice. Have someone better than you watch your flying and give honest feedback. Next time an opportunity like this comes up, I'd recommend that you take it. You just never know how much it could change your skills in the long run. Piggybacking onto that too is good old Mount Stupid. This was me when I started out. Then over the next 6 months of FPV, I got to this point, which was when my perception of how much I know about the hobby was as high as it could go. From here, I found out through trying to fix my drone that I hadn't a blimmin' clue what I was doing and fell straight off the edge of Mount Stupid, right back down to the bottom thinking I know absolutely nothing. The higher you climb up the metaphorical mountain of thinking you know everything in the beginning means that there is only going to be so much more of a drop for you to fall back down on the way back down. The more humble you can keep yourself in thinking you know everything there is to know, the easier your descent is going to be from Mount Stupid. Oh, okay, here's a fun one. Previous to my first time partaking in the New Zealand Open race event, I had gone out to practice with my friends day in and day out, but nothing could have prepared me for the feelings that I was going to experience on the day of the race event. As I sat down for my first race heat, I found my fingers, hand, and even my legs shaking uncontrollably. I was literally so nervous and so excited that I had hindered my flying so badly. Like, I knew that I was capable of actually doing the course, but thanks to my nerves, I was struggling to even get one lap in. The thing that changed it for me though was doing what I usually do when I'm having an anxious moment. So my advice here is, if you get overly anxious at races, listen to chill music in your earphones. It'll steady those hands and just clear the mind. Alrighto, that now brings us to number 20, the halfway point of our book. And it's also taken me back 730 days now. You know, I do wonder what the heck I was doing wherever I am in this particular point in time 730 days ago.
What would you say that your biggest mistake has been within the FPV space?
I've definitely crashed a few drones in places that I've never been able to retrieve them.
Time is really short. That does not feel like it was that long ago. Okay, we're just gonna quick fire the crap out of the remaining 20 pieces of FPV advice. Starting off with, the more that you try to validate your knowledge against other people, the more you're gonna end up realizing how little you actually know. Get out for those sunrises and the sunsets when they're around. Be as generous as you possibly can be. There's always going to be a weird way that it comes on back to you later down the track, but for the most part, it just makes the FPV community real and alive. Help others get through things that you've already experienced and just share the knowledge. It really does benefit everybody. Learn how to solder before you try and build your first FPV drone. Do your research before you buy any gear, and make sure it's actually worth you buying. You're gonna break things and it's gonna cost you money. It's reality. Practice flying gated tracks in the simulator more than you think you should be, because as soon as you start freestyling, it's gonna show in how well you can actually do your tricks within gaps more than you've ever done before. You feel burnt out? Take a break and do something different. Except that some people just aren't gonna like drones. Let that be their problem, not yours. Keep to the laws within your area and fly away from people. Just don't ruin the hobby for everybody. If someone looks interested while you're flying FPV, just invite them over and let them have a look at your DVR. Share your experiences, findings, and mistakes. Don't be put off by the thought of building a failing quad. Everybody has, and everybody will. Always allow for twice the amount of time that you think you'll need when you go out to actually fly. Just ask questions, no matter how simple they might seem. Everything new is always going to feel overwhelming. Just know that the stage is going to pass sooner rather than later. You don't need every type of drone or every bit of gear to get the most out of the hobby. Pack your drone in the car whenever you're going on a road trip. Know that everything you're experiencing right now has been experienced somewhere or other by another person. There are always going to be answers, and that things are just going to get easier as time goes on. Jeepers, all right. Well, I think this is actually it, and damn, I guess I've changed clothes as well. We've now gone back 1,461 days back to when I was just starting out with FPV drones. In fact, this right here is actually exactly where I used to live, which is kind of crazy to see in person again now. Anyways, I wanted to leave this one last piece of advice for the very end of this video, because it's, in my opinion, the most valuable thing that I've ever heard. Whenever possible, always try your best to live by this quote. Which is more important, asked Big Panda? The journey or the destination? The company, said Tiny Dragon. I think after this entire journey back through my last 4 years, even though I've had some challenging times and points where I nearly gave up, I wouldn't actually change a thing. I'm so happy to have my friends that I've made through this hobby, and I'm equally as happy to have you here watching these videos. It really does mean the world to me. So actually, instead of giving younger Brody this booklet, who I'm sure is probably in that caravan right now, I think I'd like to give it to you. And if you want to keep these 40 pieces of advice and share them around, I've put a link down in the description box below where you can actually download this booklet. And of course, if saving you money isn't a good enough reason to go and download it, it's not going to cost you any either. It's completely free. All right, I've got 1,400 and something days to travel back through now, so I'll see you again soon. Anyone seen the time machine? Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God.